Pecking birds, real and wooden. These are an old Polish folk toy, and very beautiful too. The swinging weight underneath pulls on the strings, and that makes the heads bob up and down. But to make one of those, you'd need to be something of a woodcarver. So here's how you can make one out of cardboard with much less skill, but it's still as good if you like solitary hens. This is the way it comes up. One single, brightly coloured hen pecking at the wheat that you've put out in front of it. How does it work? Well, very simply, but the basis of it is a seesaw of cardboard that's pinned on either a pin or a piece of wire. And it can rock back and forth because it's pulled at either end by those strings, little threads. What pulls the strings? A piece of plasticine in this case, going back and forth, tugging on it and rocking the thing from side to side. And that's all it is, that's the principle, and you can see, without painting, that applied to the body of the bird will make it do exactly the same thing. Okay, how do we set it up and how do we put it together? This is exactly what we do. First of all, you must start with decent cardboard. It's got to be fairly stiff. If it isn't, it'll crumple, but if it's too stiff, you won't be able to cut it. So start with something that's just nice and crisp like that. And you make your bird's design on it. Give it a head at one end and a tail at the other. Something fairly balanced is the best start. Then when you put it down on a safety sheet at the back, or a rough wooden table, use a very safe knife here to go around the outline, and where you can, of course, use scissors. But you probably need the knife to cut into the sharp corners. And when you've finished it, that's the sort of result you should have, once you've trimmed it up a bit. Then paint it on both sides, as brightly as you can. Well, you noticed on my little pecking bird, there was the body of the bird, I've just done that, but it had legs, and it had a pivot, and it had a baseboard with a hole in it where the strings went through. So let's do the hole first. More of the same cardboard. There we are. We put it down flat like that, put the body of the bird on it, and to make sure the hole is the right size, just mark the length of the body of the bird from there to about there. And that should give us the size of the slit that we need to cut. And again, with a ruler and a safety knife, just chop that out. And this is the result you should expect, something like that. And that can go to one side waiting for the legs. Well, how long do you make the legs? Remember that the bird has to stand up above the board, so if you make legs something like that, they're pretty simple. Don't make them go higher than the side of the bird, that'll look silly. Put them in position. Remember the pivot will go through somewhere in the middle of the bird there, and you want to bend the leg into the foot at around about that sort of level. And if you want to bend cardboard simply, keep your fingers away, score it lightly with a sharp point, a blade or a pair of compasses or something, and then you'll find that you can bend it neatly, cracking it along that junction. And if you do that, you get two legs the same size, and they'll sit on the bird rather like that. Now we need to make some holes. Best done with a nail or a pair of compasses or a sharp pin, something like that. Okay, get the leg into position, and if you then drive a hole down through the top of the leg there, for the pivot point, you'll find, if you get things properly lined up, it'll make a hole about in the middle of your bird, and that's the best place for it. It'll rock best if you can make the hole about there. Before you finish, put the other leg alongside this one and make a hole in the same place there. They've got to be opposite each other, otherwise it goes a bit kinky. Put those to one side, and remember, with that hole in the middle of the bird, you want the holes for the thread in the same sort of line. So out there on the edge of the bird goes one thread hole, like that, and in line out here goes another thread hole, like that. And you see the pivot hole is pretty well halfway between the two. Well, for a pivot, you can either use a pin, or I find that a paper clip, straightened out and bent as I need it, will give me exactly the right sort of thing. There it is, an L-shaped piece of wire, but any piece of wire does. Even a pin with the sharp point cut off. And you assemble it in this way. Tie some thread into that hole and that hole. That's a bit fiddly, you may need to practice a bit. Put a weight in the middle of that thread so that the bird's body, when you have the wire through all of these pivot holes, is central, and then with a bit of a rock, the thing gets going. And all you have to do is to place the wheat for it to peck. Well, you're not restricted to birds. I made a hen because it's a traditional Polish toy, but you can make a rocking toy out of absolutely anything that has a rocking central part, even a cowboy galloping across the desert.
I want to know. Curiosity.